I like to give historical context and perspective to a lot of things. Hat tip to our friends at ISI, who in part have pointed out, in the summer of 1798, stick with me, the United States was close to war with France. Many members of the Federalist Party, including President John Adams and Federalist leaders in Congress, not only believed that their Democratic-Republican opponents were pro-French, but that their vocal opposition to administration policies was dangerous to the country's security. Therefore, to silence as well as to weaken the Democratic-Republican Party, Congressional Federalists passed 4 statutes, which are collectively known as the Alien and Sedition Acts. I want to focus on the Sedition Act. This measure aimed to curb public criticism of the Adams administration, especially at the hands of pro-Democratic Republican newspapers. Passed on July 14, 1798, the act asserted that to print, utter, publish any false, scandalous, and malicious writing, quote-unquote, against the federal government, including the president himself, was a treasonable crime punishable by imprisonment and or fines. Although the Adams administration did act upon the alien laws, the Sedition Act was enforced with great vigor. Over 24 pro-Republican newspaper editors were arrested, fined, and imprisoned. Their newspapers, moreover, were shut down. Included among those charged was Benjamin Franklin Bache, grandson of Benjamin Franklin and editor of the pro-Jeffersonian Philadelphia paper, the Aurora. These efforts to halt political dissent backfired. Many Americans believed the acts unconstitutional and were outraged that newspaper editors had been charged and imprisoned. The acts also led to the passage of Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, 1799, written by James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, respectively. Passed by their state legislatures, these resolves condemned the actions of the Federalist Congress and asserted that the states had the authority to declare them unconstitutional. Now, we had at least one congressman, Brady of Philadelphia, who last week called for legislation to criminalize certain words and symbols. The number 3 Democrat in the House, James Clyburn, has called for a return to the fairness doctrine and equal time. The chairman of the FCC has said he opposes that, but the liberals do support other regulations of new media that could eventually affect talk radio, even worse than the fairness doctrine. And they have already attacked free speech on the Internet with so-called net neutrality efforts. The president himself railed against the Supreme Court in his State of the Union spectacle last year for ruling that the First Amendment and political speech under the Constitution requires broader speech. Now, I don't believe we face a Sedition Act type law. But there's no question that the left, which controls most instrumentalities of the federal government, and the mainstream media, which are basically cheerleaders for the left, and which, among its so-called reporters, are many, many leftists, are in fact trying to intimidate and silence opposition to Obama's policies. That's the bottom line. They are now characterizing passionate and accurate speech as violent rhetoric. It's more than uncivil. Now, if rhetoric is inciting violence, it needs to be addressed, doesn't it, ladies and gentlemen? If rhetoric is violent, it needs to be addressed by whom? The government. So we need to address violent rhetoric, says David Gregory, or rhetoric that promotes violence. So whereas during the Adams administration, newspaper publishers and editors spoke up and fought against such government unconstitutional behavior, we now have a news media that roots for it. A news media that has spent over a week demagoguing and propagandizing, including David Gregory, including scores of individuals at our major newspapers, including every single news network in the country. NBC, ABC, CBS. And on cable, CNN and MSNBC, and on Fox, a few of the libs. Immediately the First Amendment is attacked. Immediately the Second Amendment is attacked. You know what else is attacked under the Bill of Rights? Due process rights. They seek to take property from individuals who they disagree with. In other words, the livelihoods of those individuals, some of whom are talk radio hosts and so forth, by forcing them off the air. This is a building enterprise on the left. And to watch some of these idiot Republicans who don't seem to comprehend what's going on all around them, to play along is really an embarrassment, if not worse. We're going to sit together. Tom Coburn is going to sit next to Chuck Schumer to show civility. Chuck Schumer, the least civil individual in the entire United States Congress. But he's going to sit next to him to show that he can be civil. Are we in kindergarten here? Did I miss something? Are they going to bring peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and share those too? We, the American people, are the most tolerant people on the face of the earth. We're the most civil people on the face of the earth. We're the most law-abiding people on the face of the earth. In a lot of other societies, you can look at Latin America, you can look at parts of Africa, you can look at parts of Southeast Asia, you can look at parts of Europe and so forth. When the people get angry, they rise up. And I don't mean they vote. I mean they throw the government out by force, which is something we completely reject in this country, and we conservatives especially reject. Isn't it funny the liberals, typically they say conservative. That means they want to conserve. That means they're for the status quo. But all of a sudden, we're left-wingers who want to use guerrilla tactics. When did that happen? It's never happened. And it never will happen. The American people have behaved with civility. The American people have behaved exactly as our forefathers wanted us to behave. The problem is the media are not behaving as our forefathers wanted the media to behave. And our federal government's not behaving the way our forefathers wanted our federal government to behave. I don't know how you can be a constitutionalist and embrace what's going on in Washington, D.C. Oh, you're allowed to disagree with it, but how? How are we to disagree with it? When people organize spontaneously in towns and cities all across the nation, where we have thousands of Tea Party organizations, not one person heading them, they're libeled by the powers inside the Beltway and their mouthpieces in the media. Absolutely libeled from day one. So I guess we're not allowed to do that when we rally at the Capitol building. Pick up our own trash. Incite nothing but thinking. We're attacked for that too. When we vote and turn out the liberals, as occurred in this election and has occurred in past elections, it is said that we're having a temper tantrum. You see, the problem is the disrespect that people in government and people in the media have for the people of the United States, not the other way around. We're told to get involved, but only to the extent that we support them. Apparently. That's what I'm hearing.